Talk to Joe on 1850 715 815.
You can text 51551. Mary Cahill's on the line. Hello, Mary.
Hello, Damien.
You're the keeper of the Irish antiques at the National Museum, and we were discussing the whole area of metal detectors last week and the importance of artefacts to the National Museum. So it was last Thursday. We had Pat Wallace on here last Wednesday, former head there, and we had a discussion about the use of metal detectors and all of that. And then what happened on Thursday, Mary?
Well, on Thursday, 2 small packages arrived in the post, and they were delivered in to me from the front desk at the museum here in Kildare Street, where the archaeological collections are exhibited and stored. And they were addressed to the History Museum, Kildare Street, Dublin 2. They had no stamp or any kind of name, date, nothing, no paperwork of any description with them, not a note or a letter. But within them were 4 important archaeological objects. Now, these are 4 objects that date from very different periods. There's a very broad sweep of chronology involved in these objects. The earliest one, it dates from around 2000 BC or so, and the latest one dates to the Viking period, to the 10th century AD.
So how valuable or how rare are they?
Well, the 2 axe heads, which date to the early and middle Bronze Age, are relatively common types, but nonetheless, they're not objects that people would find every day of the week. Then there was a 3rd object, a little twisted ring, and then the 4th object, which is extremely unusual and very rare. It's what's called a strap tag or a strap end, and it's a metal piece, a decorative piece that's used to decorate the end of a strap or a belt. Now, in this particular case, it's highly unusual because this is not an Irish object. This is a Scandinavian object which has, we think, found its way to Ireland with the movement of Viking peoples backwards and forwards during the 9th, 10th centuries. And it's the first of this particular type that we have actually seen here in the museum. Now, we think that the objects were sent into the museum by somebody who heard the programme last week, who has come into possession of the objects some way or another, possibly by metal detecting or perhaps not. We're not 100% certain of that, although just from the look of them and because they date to these many different periods, that's probably likely. And perhaps they thought, having heard Pat Wallace's very impassioned appeal for our heritage and culture, that they felt, that they should actually deliver these to the museum in some way. And while that is a very good thing in itself, and we're delighted to see them, we really do need to find out where these objects came from. It's very, very important in terms of how we understand our archaeology, our whole history and archaeology of the country, and where the objects fit into that pattern, the patterns of distribution that we see for different object types all over the country. It's so important for us to know where these objects came from and what fine circumstances they were made.
Why do you think, Mary, they were handed in such an anonymous fashion?
Well, it's not unusual for us to get anonymous phone calls telling us about things that have been seen perhaps in a shop somewhere or perhaps a monument that is being affected by some building operation or something like that. It's not at all unusual for us to get an anonymous call, but it is actually very unusual for objects to be delivered anonymously. Even if somebody leaves something at the front desk, they'll always leave a name, an address, a telephone number or something with it.
Yeah, I just wonder,
Yes, I think in this case that the person was listening to the programme and probably thought, I have these objects, clearly they are of archaeological and historical importance, and I should do the right thing by sending them into the museum. I imagine that was their reaction to that.
But do you think as well that they may have actually found these objects using a metal detector, and after listening to the programme again and what was said about metal detecting, for and against it, that they might have felt, that they find themselves in some trouble with you or whatever, if they came in and said, I was out metal detecting the other day in my land and this is what I found. If somebody went in and said that to you, what would your reaction be, Mary?
Well, our reaction is that we are open to talking to anybody who has found an archaeological object anywhere in the country. We really want to make contact with people to talk through the whole situation with them. Very often people who have been using metal detectors sometimes don't realise exactly what the precise state of the law is in Ireland with regard to metal detecting. Sometimes we have to sit them down and explain that to them. We go through the whole system with them. We explain to them why the law is as it is in Ireland and why we feel the necessity to protect Ireland's archaeology and history by not allowing indiscriminate metal detecting to take place.
But will they have, I mean, it's the law, so can they be prosecuted in any shape, way or form? You know, is it up to you to report them, or...?
Well, what we like to do is to work with people. We like to ask them to cooperate with us and to cooperate with the museum.
What's the penalty for metal detecting and finding artefacts like this, according to the law?
Well, there can be quite severe penalties, but that is entirely up to the courts. If a case went to court, then it would be up to the judge. There are fines and there are periods of imprisonment, but it very, very rarely, I really would like to stress that it very, very rarely gets to that point.
Yeah, but you see, now we're getting to the reason why people, and in this instance, why this individual handed these in. Maybe their conscience got to them. They realised how important the artefacts were to the country after Pat Wallace's impassioned plea, but at the same time says, I'm not going to jail for it.
At the same time, Damien, we would really see the fact that the person has handed the objects up as a positive thing, and we would like to take that and work with the person on the basis that they have now done the right thing. The best thing for them to do, for this person to do, is to come forward and let us have the full archaeological information and background of these objects. This is so important because without that, we are effectively back in the situation that we were in the 19th century when the Royal Irish Academy, for example, began to collect an archaeological collection for the country and to make a museum for the country. At that time, it wasn't understood and appreciated.
But Mary, you can appreciate why they'll say, I am in my, you know what, going back in there. I could end up in big trouble if I go back in and sit down with them there and tell them where I got it and how I got it.
Yes, well, I think as Keeper of Irish Antiquities, I can safely say that in my own experience of dealing with people over a very long career here in the museum, that we always find that the best thing to do is to talk. We are more than happy to sit down and discuss all the details.
Well, they won't talk. Would they talk themselves into a prison sentence?
No, they won't talk themselves into a prison
sentence.
It's
just to be clear on that, because if you do want the person to come forward, they have to be assured that they're not going to get themselves into trouble. You can imagine.
Yes, they will. They may find this. Of course, we're assuming that these objects were metal detected. There's always a possibility that they were found in some other way.
Yeah.
The reason that we think they might have been metal detected is because the four objects are so very different in type and period from one another. They couldn't have been found together, for example, let's say in the course of normal agricultural activity, building works, gardening, cutting turf, or anything like that. Those are the ways in which objects are usually found. These objects couldn't have been found together. So there is that chance that they were metal detected. But I still would like to encourage the person. They've gone 75% of the way, and there's just that one other step to take.
Well, if they don't want to go and meet you in person, again, for fear of what might happen to them, but they do want to help you, what information do you require of them that they could go back down again the way they did last week and hand in another envelope with details? What details are you looking for specifically, Mary, if they are listening to us now?
Well, when finders come in with objects to the museum, we sit down with them, we ask them for information about where the object was found. We like to know the name of the townland, the county obviously, and the name of the townland. We get out the maps and we go through the maps with them and we mark as precisely as possible the actual spot where the objects were found, because this is what helps us build up a distribution and to understand the way in which objects have moved around the country over time. We also like to know what kind of soil conditions the objects were found in. Was it ordinary agricultural land? Was it a bog? Was it a river, a stream, a lake? There are lots of questions like that which relate to the provenance and fine circumstances of the object. And this is what we record, and this is what archaeologists then use to build up a picture of the country's archaeology and history. With regard to the Viking object, the strap tag, this has originated probably in Norway and has found its way to Ireland. This could be a very important pointer as to Viking activity in a part of the country that perhaps it hasn't been recorded or noted before. And that is probably the most important reason for us to record the find places. And this is one of the things that we spend most of our time doing when we meet finders. We actually go out into the countryside. We travel to all the locations around the country where objects have been found to see what more we can discover from an actual examination of the ground as well.
Yeah. So if you can pinpoint where these artefacts came from, what happens then? Do you go down? Do you cordon off an area?
Not
if it's
necessarily.
okay.
It may very well just depend on the particular find circumstances. In some circumstances, yes, we will go to that particular location to see if there's anything further that we can glean from an examination of the ground. In some cases, it might entail a small excavation of that actual find place. Generally speaking, that's not necessary. For example, if objects have been turned up in plough soil by the action of the plough, it may not require an actual excavation per se on site, but it might require a physical examination just to see if we can establish any more archaeological
How
information.
deep would these goods have been buried?
Very often not very deep at all. Most objects come into the museum as chance finds, and they're made by, for the most part, farmers. Certainly a lot of people who are involved in working on the bogs. Sometimes people just working in their own gardens. Even fishermen have picked up late Bronze Age socketed axes just fishing in rivers or in lakes. So the objects can be found in any number of different ways. And while sometimes it does require us to go out and investigate the precise find circumstances and do a small archaeological excavation at the site, very often that is not necessary. But it all just depends, and each find is really different.
Okay, and look, if people have objects out there, however they were found, you want them, and they can be reassured they're not going to get themselves in trouble. You wouldn't be coming on looking for this person if you were going to shop them.
No, and if I could just say, Damien, before I finish, that we depend so much on the goodwill of the people. This is how the collection was built in the first place, and this is how it continues to be built, because we get reports of finds on a weekly basis from people from all over the country, which we very much appreciate, because this is, after all, the National Museum, and it is the People's Museum. It's the People's Collection.
Okay, all right. Well, Mary, thanks indeed for contacting us. Hopefully that plea will work, and you heard there. You heard there what you're looking for. You're basically looking the townland, when it was found, where it was found, the type of soil, and they're important piece of information at the very least that you want off this person if they didn't want to go back up to you in person. And maybe they do. Maybe they just.
But I really would like the message to get out there that I would really like this person to contact me themselves individually and to come to the museum and talk to me, or we will go and meet them.
All right, Mary Cahill in the National Museum on Kildare Street. Okay. All right, Mary, thanks indeed for that. That's Mary Cahill there. So if you were that person who dropped in that parcel last Thursday, Mary wants to talk to you.